The Sports Town Podcast.
All right, I'm pleased to be joined by a reoccurring guest, Jesse Head of the Heads Up Falcons podcast. How's it going, Jesse?
It's going good, man. It's going good.
All right, so let's start off with the big news on Sunday. Julio Jones was officially traded and to the Titans. Now, last time you came on, you said you really thought he'd go to the Titans. I thought he was going to probably the Patriots, but you were correct. What did you think of the trade?
I thought it was good. I thought it was exactly what we all thought was going to happen in the beginning. I think we all kind of thought Tennessee Titans were the front runner from the get-go with Derrick Henry and then being on the brink of a Super Bowl. So I thought it was exactly what we thought it was going to be from the get-go. Everything in between that you heard about all these other teams and a first-round draft pick and all those rumors that were possibly out there. Clearly, all that was just smoke and mirrors. And we got, it happened how we all thought it would be. And we cleared up the cap space that we needed to get. Got a relatively high pick and a mid-rounder for it. So overall, I'm pretty happy with it.
All right, so the Titans have another weapon. They already have A.J. Brown. They have Derrick Henry. Now they add in Julio Jones. How well do you think they'll do next season? Because it looks like they're going to win the AFC South probably pretty easily.
Yeah, there's not much competition there. I think they have a solid team all around. I think the only question mark at this point is Ryan Tannehill. And I know that sounds crazy after having the 2 seasons that he's had in a row, but you just lost your genius-minded offensive coordinator. A lot of people like to give credit to Derrick Henry being there for Arthur Smith being able to run that offense, but Derrick Henry wasn't doing that before he got there. Ryan Tannehill wasn't the guy that he was before he got there. So I think they're going to be a good team. I think they'll win, and I think they'll probably make a run in the playoffs. They should make a run in the playoffs, but I do think a lot of that up in the air, or a lot of that is up in the air based off of what their offensive coordinator, their next offensive coordinator is going to do. A lot changes when you lose an offensive coordinator. Just ask Dan Quinn how it was when Kyle Shanahan left after we went to the Super Bowl. We were never the same team again. So that is, I think they'll do well next year. But the big question out there is their offense going to look the same under a different minded coach? So it all depends there, but I think they'll do well.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about Ryan Tannehill. I don't know if he's that good of a quarterback, but I think if you give him weapons like what Tennessee has done, he's going to do solid. I think last year he relied a little too much on Derrick Henry, but I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, Derrick Henry's a beast. Derrick Henry is probably the best running back in football right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's go on to Atlanta's side of the trade. It seemed pretty lopsided. All they got was a second and a 4th round pick. Do you think they could have got more with another team or?
No, I think that they got as much as they can out of the situation that, we were dealt with Julio. I mean, you got a perfect storm here. So with the leverage that you have in the position that we were in, you're talking about, number one, everybody knows we don't have any money. We talked about that the last time I was on your show. And, he didn't want to be here. So when he went on and talked to Shannon Sharp, and now it's coming out that he did not know that he was on there. So I'm a little bit shocked about that. And then with him being an older receiver and people being unsure about how much time that he truly does have left, I think you combine all those things, and I think that we got exactly what we need. A lot of people like to compare, well, we traded Sanu to the Patriots for a 2nd-round pick. A lot of people like to forget that little thing happened there. But the only thing with that is that he didn't have a giant contract attached to his name. Stephon Diggs went for a 1st-rounder as well. He got traded for a 1st-rounder, but he's a younger guy and has a ton of potential ahead of him. You're trading a guy that we're just not so sure. He's kind of beat up. We don't know how serious that hamstring thing is, and it's consistent. It's been a consistent thing for if you're a diehard Falcons fan, you've seen him limping off the field for the past 4 years off and on. So with his age and all the other factors, us having no money and him not wanting to be here and wanting to be traded, I just feel like all of our leverage was pulled out from under us to get a 1st-round draft pick. So is it what you wanted for the superstar wide receiver that you have on your team, the obvious future Hall of Famer? absolutely not. You want to get a first rounder. But the reality is we were in a situation where we pretty much had to trade him, and this is as much as we could get. So given that situation, we got as much as we could for him. So you almost have to say, the Falcons got everything they could for him. So you have to look at that as a win. As a Falcons fan, outsiders are going to look in and say that it's not a win because you didn't get a first round for it. But when you combine all those factors, that's as much as we could get for him.
I was a little shocked that they only got a second and a fourth round pick. But as you mentioned earlier, and I read a lot of articles about it, how they just needed money and they were so desperate to trade him. And now again, Julio went out and said he wanted to be gone. So teams, I think at the same time took advantage of that. So
perfect storm.
Yeah. Let's stay with the Atlanta side for a little bit here. I think you mentioned it last time you came on, but do you think Calvin Ridley can be the number one guy that Julio is gone?
I think he can definitely be the number one guy. Now, is he going to be Julio? Is he going to replace Julio? I don't think so. I don't think anybody is ever going to replace a talent like that. But he can be Calvin Ridley, and Calvin Ridley is a number one receiver. The stats prove it. I mean, the guy had 1,300 yards last year in a season. A lot of people, all the attention was on Julio. He had 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns in a year that Julio Jones only played 8 games. So the games that he didn't play, I think I saw the stats earlier. I did not write those down, but I believe he had like 660 yards and 4 touchdowns with Julio not playing in the game. So, I mean, in 8 games, that's pretty good. You multiply that, you're looking at a 1,300-yard season and 8 touchdowns. So I mean, that's a wide receiver one. The statistics that you want to have there. And then with Kyle Pitts and this, 11 personnel that this 1-1 personnel that we're going to be running with 2 tight ends on the field and the play action and everything, I think Calvin Ridley can certainly step up and be a number one wide receiver in Atlanta. A lot of people there's this illusion because we had Julio for so long. It's hard for any Falcons fan to imagine that we could move forward without him. You know what I mean? It's hard. Like we're not going to win without Julio is kind of the mindset that people have. But look at the past 4 years. Have we been winning with him? So, I mean, there's a lot of teams in the NFL that are winning without a Julio Jones on their team. So I'm not on the side of hitting the panic button because we lost Julio. Trust me, I wanted to keep him if we could. I just never saw that as a possibility. But I certainly think that we can be successful, and I definitely think Calvin Ridley is going to have a good, strong, and long career here in Atlanta.
Who do you think will have a better season this year or this upcoming year? A.J. Brown or Julio Jones?
Gosh, man, this is a tough question. That's a tough question. I struggle with this one. I'm not going to lie. It's hard to say because you've got Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown have this chemistry already. And it's crazy to look at this. I was looking up his stats, but A.J. Brown he's been in the league 2 years. His first year he had 1,000 yards. His second year, last year, he had 1,000 yards, and he had 11 touchdowns last year. That dude's going to be a superstar. I mean, those are for the first 2 years in the NFL. That guy is going to be. He's about to step into absolute stardom, and now he's got one of the best receivers of all time on his team. I think that Julio should have the bigger year. But I don't think it's going to be by much. I think they're going to be, right beside each other, kind of like a Arizona back in the day when they had Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden on the same team. They were just always right there neck and neck with one another. I think it's going to be a similar situation like that. But I think they're going to try to feed and use Julio as much as possible with the question mark of him and how long he's going to be able to play. So I think that, and I think he's going to, I think he's got a great year left in him, possibly 2 great years left in him. So I think that he'll have the bigger year, but I don't think it'll be maybe by 100 yards. And I don't think he'll have more touchdowns than A.J. Brown.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so shocked right now. The Titans have so much weapons, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and they got Derrick Henry. So
it's scary. If they can put it together if the offensive coordinator that they have step up, I don't even know who it is, but if he can put all those pieces together, you're looking at a Super Bowl contender for sure.
And we've kind of talked about this a little bit already, but if Ryan Tannehill, he's got so many weapons now. If he doesn't perform well this year, will it look bad on the former Texas A&M product?
Yeah, it'll definitely look bad at him, but he doesn't, with the offensive scheme that they're going for, I mean, he's not going to go out there. I don't think he's going to go out there and have, 38 touchdowns and under, 10 picks. I think it'll be more around that 30 mark and, probably 9 picks, something like that. I don't think they're going to both these receivers are going to go out there and have 1,500 yards or anything crazy like that because they're going to feed Derrick Henry. So I don't, obviously he needs to take them deep into the playoffs. I don't think it's truly like a matter of stats or having to have an MVP season per se. I don't think he's going to go out there and have, Patrick Mahomes numbers or anything like that. But I think the judgment for him is how far can you take these guys into the playoffs? And I think that will define his success as the quarterback there.
I think Ryan Tannehill is a good quarterback. I just don't think he's a great quarterback, but with the weapons and the team he has around him, and there's still question marks in the Titans defense, but I think if he's going to have a MVP type of season for him to look, good, because again, he's got so many options now.
Yeah.
What do you think is more realistic? The Titans making the Super Bowl or making it in the playoffs as a wild card, losing in the first round?
Probably, I'd say winning the Super Bowl. I mean, at this point, you have to have that. I think you have to have that idea in your head with the weapons that they have and the overall team that they have and the success that they've had. I think they're more likely to win a Super Bowl than they are to lose in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, and it seems like they have such a talented roster. Again, I keep on harping on this, but their team is so stacked, and I feel like they should easily win the AFC South.
Yeah.
The Colts are going to be solid, but I think at the same time, I'm just not sure how well Carson Wentz is going to do this year. I think he's going to do good, but now again, I just think the Titans should be able to easily win. I think there's more of a chance of them making the Super Bowl as well. Yeah. Let's go back to Atlanta's side. Their team isn't terrible. The team looks pretty solid, to be honest. Get Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, still Matt Ryan is there. Mm-hmm. Do you think and you said earlier or last time you came on, you thought they'd go 10-7. Mm-hmm. Do you think the offense will have to carry him this year, or do you think the defense will step up this season?
I think the offense needs to be your strong point, obviously. I don't think the defense is so much I think the offense, to answer your question, yes. I think they'll have to carry the team, being the stronger point of the two, offense and defense. But I think that our defense is not as much of a scare because of the caliber of teams that we're playing. We have third easiest schedule out of the entire NFL. We're playing a lot of weak quarterbacks, and Dean Pease does a lot of blitzing. And one of the things with young quarterbacks and rookie quarterbacks and the weaker quarterbacks in the NFL is when you put pressure on them, they're not that good. We have 4 rookie quarterbacks. We're playing Jalen Hurts. Ryan Fitzpatrick is one of the quarterbacks we're playing, Tua Tagovailoa, and Sam Darnold. You look at that and you're sitting there just counting wins when you start hearing names like that of the quarterbacks, 4 rookie quarterbacks. And then those other 4 quarterbacks are some of the weak quarterbacks that you're playing. So I think our schedule kind of gives some relief to our defense. But I certainly think that our offense is going to be the strong point of the team.
Yeah. That team, the team still looks solid. Again, as I mentioned earlier, they have guys like Kyle Pitts. They still have Calvin Ridley. I think Matt Ryan's going to have a solid season, even though a lot of people right now don't think that's going to be they don't think Matt Ryan's going to have as good of a season. And when you came on last time as well, you mentioned that, Matt Ryan is better than people want to give him credit for. And I think a lot of people are still, disappointed at him for, not being able to close out the Patriots in Super Bowl 51. Do you think there's a chance that if the Falcons can't do well this year, they'll try to get rid of Matt Ryan and try to just rebuild with the new quarterback?
Not this year. No. I think that if we had a horrible year and you're picking in the top 5 again, then you're probably taking a quarterback, but Matt Ryan's still going to be there. Would we bench him? I don't know, maybe. But there's still some time left on that contract. So the reason that he's still here, and if he was on the back end of his contract, last year of his contract, then I would say absolutely. But the numbers that we have right now, that are on his contract, there's no way you're not, you're moving on from him right now. And I mean, if Arthur Smith made Ryan Tannehill look good, so if he can make him look good, I feel confident that he can do those type of things with Matt Ryan. A lot of people, I mean, his big weakness is not his decision making, it's not his accuracy, it's anything like that. The big knock on him is his deep ball. And there's a lot of quarterbacks right now that don't have a deep ball that are really, really good. One just won the Super Bowl. His name's Tom Brady. So I think that. Given that, I think that, I think we can be a successful team. I think Matt Ryan can be successful out there with this, with the offensive weapons that we have. So, I mean, I feel confident moving forward with him. I don't think that we're going to move on from him anytime soon in the sense of, 2-3 years or anything like that. I think that, again, unless we pick in the top 5 or something like that, we might draft a quarterback, but I don't think that's happening unless we are picking in the top 5. So.
How many more years do you think Julio Jones has left in the tank?
I would say 2 really good years, and then 3 solid years after that. I don't think he's going to go and lead the NFL in receiving yards and touchdowns or anything like that, ever again. It's possible. If he's going to do it, it's going to be next year with him, given a ton of just risking his body and everything he has on the line. But one of the things that he has to do, or all veteran receivers have to do when they get at this point in their career, is conserve their body and make sure that they're taking care of themselves. And that means taking some games off when you're beat up. He cannot continue to go out there and play injured, play with a pulled hamstring, play with turf toe and all the things that he's been doing, throughout his 10 years with the Atlanta Falcons. At some point, he has to start taking some of the load off of himself. And that, again, that's one of the reasons that, we're not getting a first round for a guy like that, because those are the questions that are up there. But I think he has 2 really good years left, especially with being in a run-first offense. I mean, they're not going to be relying on Julio Jones to get down the field. They've got other options, plenty of other options out there. So I think he's got 2 really good years left, and then 2 to 3 solid years after that.
I don't think, and you mentioned his durability, I don't think he's going to play all 17 games now that the league went from 16 to 17. But How many games do you think he'll play this upcoming season?
I think he'll miss 4 games. I think he's healthy right now. And he says that he's healthy. I mean, everybody says that they're healthy. But they're watching him work out before they're trading for him, right? So they're making sure that their guy, if they're going to give a second and 4th rounder for him, they're making sure that when they get him there, he's going to be able to. He's going to be healthy when he walks in the door at minimum. So I think he'll miss, around 4 games, and that's being with a winning team. They're not having to rely on him. They're not going to be in a situation where they're going to have to play, all their starters towards the back end of the season, and they're getting every single rep out there. I think they're going to be a winning team. They're going to be able to give some guys some time off that are kind of beat up. So I could see him, missing possibly 4 games.
Yeah, and I think, as we've seen for the last few years with Julio Jones, he hasn't been able to play all 16 games. And now with the league going from an extra game, I mean, it's very it's not possible, I think, for him to play all 17 games. I feel like with the league going to more games, we could see a lot more load management, the way they've done in the NBA recently.
That's a good point.
Players doing load management. Speaking of load management, do you think there'll be more teams resting players and not playing all 17 games, even if they're not hurt?
I think so. Yeah. When you get to the back end, like if you got like a team like the Chiefs that are going to go out there and could potentially go, get towards the back end of the season to be 12-1, 13-1, and you've got a clear, shot at the playoffs, and there's no point in, you got home field advantage and all those different things like that. There's no point in you playing all these players. I think that's a huge possibility. That's a really good point. Honestly, I'm happy that you said that, because I haven't thought about that. How this extra game could really change things, because a 16-game season, people were freaking out about a 16-game seasons and their bodies getting beat up. So at this point, I could certainly see something like that, especially for the teams that have a clear lane to the playoffs.
And I don't think this is very likely, at least not for now, but do you think there'll be quarterbacks that will just do load management?
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick Mahomes certainly doing that. A guy like Aaron Rodgers, if he even gets out there. Tom Brady. I mean, those are guys that are, all those big names like that have so, Russell Wilson, guys that have so much money tied in. And hell, I think the coaches are probably going to push for that. You get to the back end of the season and you've already clinched your division and have home field advantage, and you've got 2 games left. Are you truly wanting to play your superstar, quarterback that's, you've got hundreds of millions of dollars tied into? Most people aren't going to want to do that. So I think, absolutely. A ton of quarterback sitting towards the back end of the season for sure.
You just mentioned Aaron Rodgers, and I think there's a lot of different. There's a lot of different takes on Aaron Rodgers at the moment. Mm-hmm. Do you think he'll go back to Green Bay, or do you think there's a good chance that he'll just rest this whole season and not play at all?
Oh man, I don't know. That's tough. Charles Barkley was on our local radio station here for the Atlanta Falcons and was talking about him and said that he kind of seems like like a girlfriend that you got to keep reminding her that she's pretty. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what it's like there. That he just wants to hear so much that, look, you're the man, you're the man, you're the man. And I get it though. I mean, the guy has not gotten the support that he deserves there. I mean, you're not going to go out there and give that guy, try to draft that guy some weapons, some, offensive, some tight end, receiver, give him something, try to go out there and give him some weapons to work with. But I think that he'll play in the end. I'm not completely sure. I don't pay attention too much to those, but usually, a guy that's been with the team that long, usually these stories end with him eventually showing up there, towards as we get closer to the season, but not sure. But usually it ends with them being out there in the end.
I think there's a better chance of Aaron Rodgers just staying put, because if he wants to go to a different team, we all know the Packers aren't going to trade him unless something drastic happens. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at it, I guess the Broncos and Raiders would make the most sense, but I feel like they would have to trade so much for Rodgers. Their team wouldn't be great. And the Broncos and Raiders are both just average at the moment. And I think it's not a good, I think the best team for him to win right now is the Packers. So I guess we'll see what ends up happening. But right now there's so many fans split on the whole thing. It's crazy. And
he may just go run Jeopardy, man. Have you seen those? Have you heard all the offers that he potentially got per se to run Jeopardy, like $100 million contract or something like that?
I had no idea that he got $100 million offer. I know he really likes doing it. And I think before all this started happening, I think he said he wouldn't mind doing both, which I wouldn't be surprised if he did both. So, alrighty. So do you think, let's go back to the Atlanta side of things. Do you think the Falcons will sign another quality veteran receiver before the season starts?
I do not think that they will do that at this point, because you've already gotten, you went and got rid of a big time veteran wide receiver that you had a bunch of money tied into. And one of the reasons we've been pigeonholed with defense and offensive line and being able to go out there and get other people is because we had so much money tied up into our skilled positions in our receivers. So I don't think you get rid of him and then go assign another guy, especially when you have a number one receiver like a Calvin Ridley. I think at this point, if you have money to play with, you try to go defense, possibly address some of the weaker points of your defense, like a cornerback or maybe another pass rusher or something like that. Maybe some safety depth or something. You don't go and that's another way just to really piss off the fan base is you go and cut somebody like that and then try to go bring in a veteran wide receiver that's not even close to or near as good as Julio ever was and is not going to fill that hole. So I think you kind of keep the offense where it is. And we did, I think, right when all that stuff was being talked about with Julio Jones after the Shannon Sharp situation, we went out and signed a former receiver that was at the Tennessee Titans when Arthur Smith was there. So we kind of filled that slot, if you will, that was open or that was going to be open for with Julio Jones being gone. So if there's money left over after you sign the draft class, or I think there may be a little bit, I think you try to put that into the defense or possibly the offensive line.
All right, as we wrap up the interview, and again, thanks so much for coming on last second notice, Jesse. Mm-hmm. So can you talk, we know about your podcast, but can you tell us more about your most recent episode and what you have in store for the future?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Obviously, we've got, things are ramping up for football. We've got Julio Jones trades happening and training camp, and a lot of other different new things with the Falcons, new offensive scheme, new defensive scheme, and just a lot of different things going on that we that are new for Atlanta Falcons fans. So we'll be talking about all those things. I think the next episode I'm going to try to aim towards is talk a little bit about OTAs and training camp and how those things are coming up and how they're going, and then definitely get into Arthur Smith's offensive scheme and how our players are going to be working into that. So try to dig into the details, kind of learning like episodes, if you will, digging into the X's and O's of the team and how I think our players are going to work into it. So you can find us on any podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, in any podcast platform that you want to listen on, and we'll be on there.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on, Jesse. Again, as he mentioned earlier, you can find his podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. You can also follow him on Instagram at Atlanta Falcons Podcast. Again, thanks for coming on, Jesse. I love talking football, especially the NFL. And now that the season's starting to get ramped up a little, we're closer, at least 2 months from preseason. So again, thanks for coming on, Jesse.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, brother.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Town Podcast, or the STP Pod for short. If you want to check out more videos of the Sports Town Podcast, click on the left. If you want to subscribe to the channel, click on the right.